Welcome to Beyond Just Business, the podcast for those who want more. More clarity, more direction, and potentially more meaning. We explore the thinking behind success, the habits that shape performance, and the questions that go deeper than profit margins. If you're ready to challenge the obvious and rethink the way life and business work, you are absolutely in the right place. Hello and welcome back to Beyond Just Business. We've got Paul Davis and myself, Andrew Rattigan, discussing another topic. And this week we're going to be talking fear and the role it plays in fueling either your fears or your ambitions. So the last couple of conversations we've had related to the stories we tell ourselves and the myth of the work-life balance. And the best title or the overview that we put on them both was it was an element of the known, that space of comfort. And today we're going to be looking at maybe just a reframe of what fear is. Paul, you were talking about your experience with it. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So years and years ago, when I'd encounter fear, and it's typically caused by financial. So where my bank balance would go down, or I would have I'd receive a big bill and then I'd be wondering, okay, so where am I going to get the money from to pay for it? Or I'd lose the client and then all of a sudden I'd get into fear mode. But fear would always paralyze me. So it'd be a point whereby I literally could not think or do anything. And it wasn't from actually working on the fear that I realized actually fear is actually just a feedback mechanism. And, some people will say, it stands for false evidence appearing real. That's what they'll use that acronym. To me, that never really worked. It's more from the point of view of when I began to see fear as feedback for something that I'm either attached to or something that I should be doing, as in what action should I be taking. And it's to give us the impetus of what I should be doing. That's when it all turned around. So what I mean by that was that when I took it as feedback, I stood back and said, okay, so let's just say finances are reducing, because that would typically be the fear that would actually cause, or the trigger that would cause it. If I stood back and said, okay, so what are the actions that I'm not doing? Or what are the actions that I should be doing in order to generate more finances or take control of the money that I had, to manage my money more effectively? Or was I too attached to money? So all of the above were lessons for me.
So that's an interesting one. So that probably perpetuates, the classic cycle, especially in service businesses, the feast or famine. You take on as many clients, you're out there pressing the flesh. In my line of work, especially in the early days, you take on people, you work with people, you price it wrong half the time because you want to get the clients in, you overexpend on time. You're busy wondering how you're going to deliver that value for them and deliver that service. You're too busy servicing and working on delivering the value you promised. And then all of a sudden your biz dev is gone, your pipeline is gone, and you're into that fear mode. I would say there's a lot of people raising that and they're going to go, yeah, that's me. Guilty. And I think that the nature of anyone when they have a business that they love is there's going to be an element of it where they either, lean into it. So, my version, I'd much rather have difficult conversations with people than stare at a spreadsheet. Ask me to look at the spreadsheet and I will wash the windows all day long. And this podcast has actually been done during the Leaving Cert here in Ireland, which is the final exams for those leaving school. When I was doing the Leaving Cert, I would have cut the grass with the scissors before I would. So when people are leaning into this fear idea, what I find very interesting is what's a common theme you see in your line of work? And I'll ask that from you first, and I'll give my thoughts from my perspective. But what's a common theme you see when it comes to either the perception of fear or what particular, is it always finance that brings up fear?
For the vast majority of people, it is finances. Yeah, it is money. Very few occasions will be a fear of doing something, which then feeds into imposter syndrome. So they tend to be the two other types that come up. But a lot of it is around the fear that's caused, and also I'm going to say anxiety along with the fear that's caused by finances. And if people could get to overcome and take control of their finances, the difference is huge. But that's in itself, that's a learning, that's a lesson to be learned.
And let's look at the lesson. How do people learn the lesson, Paul, pray tell?
What's the meaning of life again?
The answer used to be 11, but apparently it's changed due to inflation. I don't know.
Okay. So I'll go back to my own, right? One was to manage it, as in to manage money. That was learning, because a lot of people don't. So you ask them, how much money do they need in a month? A lot of people can't actually answer that question. They might say, well, I need 20,000, need 30,000 a month to live on. Well, what do you spend the 30 grand on? And a lot of people can't actually answer that question. So that's not managing money. Managing money is know where your money is coming from and what you're actually spending on. That's being in control of it.
Okay.
The biggest lesson was actually, I suppose, the crux of a lot of it that I come across with clients is the attachment to money. And once you let go of the attachment, now it's able to flow an awful lot easier. So what do I mean by that? If you've got a desire to have money, to have wealth, you're not looking at it objectively and what money can bring or the downsides of money. So you've got a fantasy about wanting more money in your life, and your whole being is consumed about wanting more money, wanting more money, wanting more money, wanting more money. But they're all the people that never have the money. And the reason being is because the more you desire something, the more it's actually going to move away. It's literally how the world works. So the more you desire something, the more it's actually going to move away from you. All the people, and again, you can do the research, because this, again, the learnings I had to learn for myself. All the people that have money don't really give a damn about the money. That's the gas thing about it. They're able to manage it, but money doesn't even enter their head, meaning they don't even think about it. So when they're creating something, whether it be a business or something, they're doing it because they want to make a difference from the point of view of, they want to create an object or a widget because this widget could make a difference in other people's lives. So they're focused on the people, they're focused on the widget, on whatever it is that they're making. They don't even give a thought to the money. So they may be running on vapors for years until the widget actually starts to make money, but they're begging and borrowing and stealing in order to actually try and get the money. But they're not attached to making the money. Bottom line is, they're not making a widget in order to make money. They're making a widget in order to make a difference in people's lives. So they're not attached to money. And the very fact that they're not attached to making money, they make the money. That's literally just how the universe works. So one of the things was around losing my attachment to money, having control and being able to manage money, and then was actually removing the emotion of the fear and anxiety around the lack of money. So when I removed all of those, that's when literally money started to flow. Clients started to flow, different opportunities started to flow. That was the turning point for me.
The facetious part of someone listening to this is going to say, sure, it's grand for someone to not care about money, and then you still got to pay the bills. But what you're actually saying, this is actually harkened back to the previous conversation we had, where you have to let someone, by virtue of free will, get to the bottom of the. And I'm not saying people need to spend every cent, but to some people that does happen, and then they have to declare bankruptcy, and then they finally, the decision to let go has been taken out of their hands, and they've no choice but to.
Yeah.
But if you're talking to someone, or someone is listening today, and they're, say, betwixt and between, let's say hand to mouth, or they're making a few quid one month and then not the next, or they have an idea that seems to show a bit of promise, but they just need to either push it a bit more, or, like you said, the fear around that unknown. How do you rationalize that for someone who's in the moment kind of going, yeah, well, that's great, but like I need, okay, let's not say 20 or 30 grand, because it's like, obviously there are, let's assume, we all have costs. If you're talking to someone who's a skeptic and they're kind of going, yeah, but that's great in theory, I'm not a Buddhist on a mountain, who's living off the land. I got bills to pay. I've got private tuition. I've got aspirations.
Yep.
How does someone begin to understand, to open the first page, to let that fear go, or to
start taking control?
Is that micro actions? Like, let's say, put all your outgoings down a piece of paper right now. Talk about Netflix. Talk about Amazon. Why do you need the two of them?
Yeah. Well, why not have two? I'm joking. Because I have both. No, I'm looking at a mess.
Raise you Disney as well, because I got Disney. I've also got the freeloaders who use our account for free.
But you've got to take control. How the world works is that if you're not able to control something, you will be controlled by it. You're not able to control something, you'll be controlled by it. So you've got to take control of money. So the first step is taking control of your money, knowing where your money's been spent on, where your money's coming in. Like you'd have clients whereby their debtors days, here's the account coming out. Their debtors days, meaning the money that's owed to them by their clients or their customers, is going back months and they're not collecting the money. That's not being in control of money. Knowing where your money's going is being in control of your money. There's how would you say, you could be efficient with it in terms of, well, look at, if I moved my mortgage or if I moved my utilities bills, could I get a better deal? That's part of managing money. But that's your first port of call. Now the next port of call then becomes, okay, so what are the actions that you can take in order to actually generate more money? So that could be moving your utility bills to a different provider. It could be, well, I need to go to more networking meetings or other events in order to meet other people that are potentially my customers. So now you're taking an action in order to bring in that income. Sitting on your couch and visualizing and hoping that money's going to come, it's not going to bring the money in. You kind of take action.
So many wasted nights.
But there are a lot of people that have done that and are still doing it to this day.
I love those funny ones where it's, woke up at 4, ice bath, journal for 11 hours, visualize what I want. And then I go to dad or your mummy's trust fund and check my balance. There's $11 million in it. That's a different type of visualization.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. So if you're like giving a step-by-step guide, because this is something I've had to learn. And I think there is that, it's almost like the fight, flight, or freeze concept, which is, in the moment you do something and you have that conversation, or we've all heard stories of extraordinary feats of strength when someone's in difficulty. I once had a teacher in school who lifted a car off his son after he got knocked down, and that still was like an amazing story. But if I asked him to go over into a car park now and do it, he probably couldn't. But that was that in the moment adrenaline rush. And I think fear has that same impact. What I'm trying to almost scratch away in someone's ear now or someone's head is, they could be busy being busy, but this is the stuff that forms the foundation of everything, whether you're busy or not. Because we're in the summertime now.
But I'm going to catch on that one, because it's not being busy for the sake of being busy. So it's actually following what your gut is telling you to do. It's like there's a whole myriad of different things that need to come into play. You got to look at your beliefs. You got to look at, what are you telling yourself? We'll go back to a previous conversation we had. What's the story you're telling yourself? But the actions that you take, the more you follow your gut in terms of the actions you take, the better the outcome. Your results will always dictate. Your results that you're having will always give you the information that you need to live your life. So what I mean by that is, well, if your bank balance is low, that's giving you the information that you need in order to actually do something different. But a lot of people don't change what they're doing. They still do what they've always done and hope for different results, but they don't get them. So you got to analyze every single thing that you're doing, which, again, being the analytical type I am and the accountant to me, I'll analyze to the nth degree in order to actually find out what actually works and what doesn't work. So in terms of the actions, so give you the example. You might have a gut feeling or an intuitive thought or a gut sense that you might, instead of actually sitting in the office and looking at spreadsheets, use your terminology. Instead of looking at spreadsheets, you might have the gut feeling of, actually, do you know what? I think I'll drive down to Bishop's Bay and I'll go for a walk and I'll go for a quick swim and I'll actually just spend the afternoon there. That's the action you should take. Absolutely. I know that's absolutely contrary to, other performance coaches out there saying, well, you got to hustle, you got to beat the sales calls and send 100 emails out a week and have X number of calls. I don't do any of that, thank God. It's a case of, you got to follow what your gut sense is telling you the whole time. They're the actions you should take.
And you see someone out there who's having a challenging time, or who's looking at the bank balance dwindling, or has just gotten an invoice. And we all know that feeling. Jesus.
Yeah.
VAT, which, if anyone who's listening internationally, is our value-added tax, which is a glorious thing to be able to have to pay every couple of months, depending on what way you choose to take your poison. If someone is sitting down, so they're going to hear two things here, which is obviously managing money and understanding, which is the not so sexy thing. You think about money, you think, oh, well, it's abundance and it's always coming in and it's always flowing and it'll always be there. There is that untapped element, which is, you're always looked after. There will always be these things find their way, guiding you, supporting you, and whatever it may be. But if you've got someone who's trying to think of making that tangible impact on whatever the drought they're going through, the first protocol is, let's just summarize it already. So first protocol is sit down, write out all your outgoings. write
Yeah.
down all your incomings, and then maybe take an inventory of your activity. And like you said, someone could be sitting at the desk hammering away at, like, obviously the classic thing of, you're only one no away from a yes. I totally understand that. But I would also give a personal example of, there's times when I've completely let go. I've gone to a spot I like to go to in Wicklow where the signal is terrible and it's scary. And literally I've come back up, and when the phone gets a signal back, I'll have 3 new clients. I wasn't smashing the phone. I wasn't ringing them and smiling and dialing and hoping for the best, but I had in a way let go. And that was the stuff that you can't really describe or explain if you're at a networking meeting. But there is also the practical side of that, which is, well, know what's going in, know what's coming out. And it's almost showing that you have a healthy respect for that flow of money in and out, rather than pretending, there's nothing wrong, whatever it may.
Because how else is the world going to teach you?
Yeah.
So you got to do something different. So the thing I would say to people is that, so if you're paralyzed in that moment and you're in fear and you're in anxiety and you're kind of saying, well, Jesus, I'm looking at my bank balance. I've got these bills to pay. What on earth do I do? First protocol is you got to change your state. And I don't mean going from Ireland to England. I'm talking about changing your view.
Strategic bankruptcy.
So I'm more talking from the point of view of the thoughts that you have in your mind create so much in your life. You have no idea how much it creates. As in, like, it is just phenomenal. So a lot of people would have heard about, your thoughts become things, all this kind of language and so on, but not really fully understood it. Whatever the thoughts that you're having in your mind, you're just going to have more of. Just take it as being a simple rule. You're going to have more of those thoughts. So the first protocol is you got to change your thoughts. Have to. Absolutely have to. And if that's as silly as, actually, do you know what? If you got kids, take them out for the day and go somewhere else. Take them to the cinema. Take them to go get an ice cream or something for free. Just take them to the park and kick the ball around. Change your thoughts in some shape or form to something that's more positive. A lot of people will talk about, write a gratitude journal. And if you write a gratitude journal, well, then that will change your thoughts. So the easiest thing is literally go into nature and do something, as in have a walk, go for a swim, kick a ball around, whatever it is. Now you're changing your thoughts from that perspective. All right. Then it's the language that you're using. And you got to be very careful with the language you use, because the language is connected with your thoughts. So therefore, you've got to change the language. So if you're saying, well, I've done this with clients. The most recent example is whereby the clients were constantly saying, we can't get any staff. We've no staff. There's literally nobody's staff we got them whatsoever. And I just noted down every single word that they said. And because this was a management team meeting that I was having, noted everything that they said. And I just replayed everything that they had said back to them. And this is the language you're saying. You're saying there's no people out there. Can't get the people and so on. And I asked them just to change the language that they were using. Within 2 weeks, they started to get the people that they were looking for. So the language that you use are hugely powerful, because again, it's an energy, it's carrying a frequency. And then the next part is your actions. What are the actions that you're actually doing? And are your actions congruent with actually generating more money? Because a lot of people will be, washing the windows or air hosing the car or doing other activities to keep themselves occupied, or staring at a spreadsheet. No matter how many hours that you stare at the spreadsheet, it's not going to change anything. So you got to do different actions. I'm not talking about, well, going to social media or post on LinkedIn or write an article. That's long term. What are the people that you could meet? Or what are the things that you could do to either reduce your costs or increase your revenue? Because it's a simple equation. So what are the actions that that you've done in the past that have delivered results? And for me, like you talk about going down to Enniskerry where there's no phone coverage. I learned that pattern years and years and years ago, where I used to take a half day off every Friday, every single week. Friday afternoon, I used to take off and I used to do horse riding. And when you're doing horse riding, you cannot think about anything else. Only just a horse that you're on at the moment in time. But like that, I'd come back into the car and there'd be messages there from new clients, potential clients, emails that I would receive in terms of either new business or money landing in my account or where I'm being, so on. It was always positive, always positive. What that then does is it reinforces the belief of things happen without you having to do anything. And that's literally one of the beliefs that I have. Things happen without me having to do anything at all. So you're now creating new beliefs. And when you're creating new beliefs, now you're getting better results. You're getting different results.
And that'll speak to those who are just really trying to action themselves into the black. Like they're trying to do as much as they can. But if they, what sounds so funny is like I've never not taken a walk around the block and not felt better afterwards. I've never come back and that was a waste of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
You could sit down and watch something crap on TV. I mean, like that was literally a waste of time. There's
Anything worse.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
never getting back. So what's interesting here is it's kind of a balance of productivity, but not generic productivity. Like don't just go wash the windows for the sake of it, but you're leaning into that intuitive side. But it is also balanced or guardrailed with practicality. So that's kind of what I hear in ways, which is there's an element of figures, money. There's like you said, there's revenue, there's bottom line. What can you cut? What can you add? What can you change? But listening to that internal driver of, or that little voice that says like, look, you can sit here all day and stare at the computer and everyone who's looking into the office thinks you're really busy because you're intently looking at a screen. But if you're intently looking at a screen going, I hope no one comes to talk to me because I'm not looking at anything, you're spending energy looking busy and looking the part rather than just being like, I'm just going to go for a walk. But that's that counterintuitive side. Like that is the other side of you've got a list of 100 names and someone else would say, if you call them, you are going to get a client. But to
Yeah.
what extent, like,
However, you could go for a walk and you could set the intention of actually, okay, so out of the list of names that you're going to call, I want to connect with the person that's going to be the best client for me. And then when you come back, you scan down through the list and a name is going to jump out at you and that's the phone call you make.
so I'd use the term quirky because someone else who maybe hasn't listened to a lot of our conversations.
Yeah. I know. And it seems weird. Honestly, look, I know that. And I know it may seem weird because that's how we've done business for years.
No, we've been taught it. Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
we said before, the breakfast is the most important meal of the day. That's a marketing ploy.
Yeah.
The concept is the same. Like if someone said to you, you were told that this is the rationale behind how things work.
Yeah.
And I would say
because I haven't tried a different way.
Yeah, and see that's again that I think that's the idea that the concept of fear is also, like you said, if someone looks at it like a feedback mechanism, it almost goes back to the same example of you don't know hot without cold, you can't have no good without bad. That it is always both sides. We have all been there. Like anybody who hasn't experienced it is lying to you. But that reframe I find fascinating. That if something starts to rear its head, if you start to find yourself becoming concerned, you're kind of going, okay, well, am I proverbially leaving my hand on the stove too long? So rather than say, well, I'm going to leave it here and see what happens, ask yourself why it's on the stove. Like ask yourself why, like, so all the activity, and I think we all know, like I've done it in the past where I've had coffees and I'm being proactive and busy, but at the end of it, if you really asked me to audit the coffees I had in early days, I said, well, they were great conversations, but they weren't the people I needed to be talking to. But I look busy. By golly, I was driving here, there, and it was really great and everything else. But like, if someone said to you, had you qualified the lead? No, I had not. It was not the person I needed to be talking to. And equally, for anyone who is listening and is doubting the idea of disappearing to Enniskerry, first and foremost, Enniskerry is mine. Stay away from it. It's my location. I'm not allowed to go near it. No, I'm joking. Anyone is welcome in Enniskerry. But I found untold benefit mentally, physically, and also from a work rate perspective from taking that time to do that. And it's funny because it's almost like saying to yourselves, if we talk about the things we're going to do, like by the time you convince yourself to go to the gym or go for a walk or go for a walk on the beach or just make that phone call, you would have made the phone call 100 times over. You would have walked on the beach 100 times over. As opposed to just saying, well, I'll try it. Even if you feel like you sound silly, and if you talk to someone over a coffee, they think you're an idiot because their mechanism is built on structure and their own story that they tell themselves, like we talked before. Maybe someone's homework after listening to this today is just saying, look, first and foremost, if you have a concern about finances, don't stick your head in the sand. Don't put the red letter under the bed and hope it's going to find its way into someone else's pocket. Sit down, write it down. The numbers will tell you where you're at. And you might find when you do it, first and foremost, that there's great changes you can make that'll actually, like you said, it could be, we're saying the business equivalent of Netflix and Disney, but there could be other versions where you say, well, if I cut this and cut that, which I've done in the last number of months, even just as a good exercise, and then you're mentally saying, well, there's 60 quid I saved on something that I wasn't using. You're mentally then saying, right, I'm now primed to look for the opportunity on the equal and opposite side of that, which is, well, now I've got other ideas here. And you're not pretending it doesn't exist, but you're not also freezing and hoping it goes away.
But also, I don't want people going for a walk and thinking that that's going to solve the problem.
Wait a minute. It's
You've
not going to solve the problem.
you've got to go for a walk, but you got to let it go.
Yeah.
So there's no point in going for a walk, and preferably in nature, but there's no point in going for a walk and worrying about the financial situation. You're better off going for a walk and asking yourself the question, okay, so what could you do to generate money?
Mm.
Now you're going to come up with different ideas or different thoughts of what you could actually do. And now they stem into the little micro actions that you can take. And then you take those micro actions. But now you're actually doing something about fixing your situation. But just going for a walk and just continue to worry is not going to serve any purpose whatsoever. It's actually going to do worse.
Okay, so the three things, if we're going to leave someone with the takeaway for this, are first and foremost, if you have concerns or you're seeing a common trend or thread around your finances when it comes to like biz dev, when it comes to you're spending more than you make, or you notice that feast and famine trend, first and foremost, would we say sit down and write the simple in and out?
In and out, in effect, look at your budget. That's just a simple thing, but also look at patterns. Actually try and observe the pattern in your life. Observe where you're going through that feast and famine cycle. So what's the triggers or what tends to in your life, because your life will follow a pattern. And when you see the evidence, you can identify the pattern and then do something, the trigger or the item of the action or the non-action of what it is that you should be doing.
But I preface that with, like you said before, which is it's feedback. It's not, doesn't have to be judged.
No, absolutely yes, feedback. Yeah.
People are going to get lost in this concept of I'm terrible, I overspent on X, but it's actually not. You write it down.
Even what you've just said there, Andrew, in terms of those sentences that people say, oh, I'm terrible with money, I don't need much money at all. That's the language that you're using. And therefore, well, if that's the language that you're using, that's exactly what you're going to get. Being in control of money does not mean, oh, I'm terrible at money. But then now you got to be expert at money in order to be in control of money.
Okay, so that's our first one. And then our second one, you were mentioning around the idea of a walk, but not a worry walk.
You've got to do something to change your state. So, and preferably like a walk in nature works so fast, but therefore you might as well go for a walk in nature. Think of the things of what are the things that you love to do. Could be fun things to do, but ultimately it's going to improve or move you to a higher state. So worrying about money is stress. Think of it as heavy energy. Then you want to do the things that are going to give you a lighter energy. So think from the point. So different things I'll do is like, yeah, I'll go for a walk in nature. I'll do a whole list of different DIY tasks. So I'll do a DIY task. And do you know what? Could be between 9 o'clock and 5 o'clock on a Monday to Friday. It makes no difference. So you do it whenever you choose to do it. So now you've got to focus on the task that you're doing, which is DIY versus worrying about money. Worrying about money is not going to do anything. The only thing is you're going to get is going to get more evidence and more stress in your life to enable you to worry more about money. So you got to do what are the activities that's going to switch that brain off to think about something else. So you're stopping worrying about money. And if there's activities that you can do that improve your state of being, meaning you're in a much, much higher state, as in you feel better, well, then they're the activities you should do.
And for anyone who doubts that and, wants examples that aren't outside of the ordinary, you think of the likes of Tony Robbins, who stands on, jumps on that bloody trampoline every time he goes on. He's changing his state every single day.
State there.
And that's for people who maybe doubt what that means. They think maybe the classic phrase of woo woo pops out, but like anyone who's upset, you get them to do 20 jumping jacks. It's funny how that can reframe someone in a moment. And like that's biological. That's not something that's, you're not summoning a spirit to change your mind or whatever. But I think if we're giving someone two simple things, it's sit down and write it down. And I think notice the pattern, but don't judge. And secondly, change your state. Is that the best way to put it? Have you anything else to add?
And then follow the actions that you're nudged to. So follow your gut feeling in terms of what are the actions that you should take. Instead of saying, okay, well, I've got a list of these 100 people to ring, that might be your conscious thinking of doing, well, I've got to ring these 100 people. Yeah. Well, what's your gut telling you to do? Your gut could be telling you, actually, you should send an email to this particular person or do a video or do something. It could be completely different. And then there are the activities you got to do. You got to follow your gut.
To listen.
Your instinct. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I think so far that's going to give someone, we had a great takeaway in the previous episode. And I think this week we got 3 takeaways from people. And if people just sit down, keep it simple, and remember that, like you said, Paul, fear is feedback, and it's not false expectations or whatever it is appearing real. Let's let that one go.
Yeah, that's just BS. Yeah.
And you can also do DIY between 9 and 5. That's another key takeaway.
Monday to Friday. Yeah.
Monday, Friday. Saturday, Sunday, it's a time and a half.
That's your day off.
Well, that's great, Paul. I look forward to talking to you next time.
Cool.
And that's it for another episode of Beyond Just Business. If it gave you something to think about, or it helped you see things a little differently, we're delighted. But make sure you're following so you don't miss out on the next episode. Stay curious, keep questioning, and we will see you next time.